I stand in the doorway of Madison's birthday party, watching my sister bask in the glow of another perfect moment. The crystal champagne flute in my hand catches the light, and I imagine how satisfying it would be to send it shattering against the pristine white wall behind her head. My name is Chloe, and I've spent 25 years being the shadow to Madison's spotlight. Speech! Speech! Mother's voice rings out above the crowd, her designer dress matching Madison's because of course it does. The guests part like the Red Sea, creating a path between my sister and her adoring audience. I stay rooted in my corner, knuckles white around my glass. "Oh, I couldn't possibly," Madison demurs, but her eyes are already scanning the room, drinking in the attention. She's wearing the pearl necklace Father gave her for graduation, the same graduation where my gift was a pat on the back and a reminder to keep trying. "Just a few words, darling," Father chimes in, his arm around Mother's waist. They're the picture of proud parents, beaming at their favorite creation. Madison straightens her spine, practiced smile in place. "Well, if you insist." She raises her glass, and 50 other glasses rise in response. Mine stays down. I just want to thank everyone for making my 27th birthday so special, especially my wonderful parents, who've always believed in me and supported my dreams. The words hit like acid in my stomach. I take a long drink, remembering last week's conversation with Mother. "Why can't you be more like your sister? Madison never needed help with rent." "And of course," Madison continues, "my little sister Chloe, who's always been there, in her own way." The patronizing tone makes my teeth ache. Aunt Lisa catches my eye from across the room, her expression sympathetic. She's the only one who sees through this charade. "To family!" Madison concludes, and the crowd echoes her sentiment. I drain my glass and grab another from a passing waiter. The alcohol burns, but not enough to dull the rage building in my chest. Everyone's clustered around Madison now, offering congratulations, compliments, business cards. She's a rising star in corporate law, Mother's pride and joy, Father's golden child. "Quite a turnout," comes a voice beside me. It's Ethan, my boyfriend, arriving fashionably late as usual. His presence should be comforting, but tonight it just highlights how out of place I feel. He belongs here more than I do, with his successful graphic design firm and effortless charm. They'd show up for the opening of an envelope if Madison's name was on it, I mutter. "Chloe." His tone carries a warning I choose to ignore. The champagne's working its magic now, loosening my tongue and my inhibitions. I watch Mother adjust Madison's hair, the gesture so tender it makes me want to scream. When was the last time she touched me like that? "I should go congratulate my sister," I announce, pushing off from the wall. Ethan reaches for my arm, but I shake him off. "Maybe wait until you've sobered up a bit," he suggests. I'm already moving, drawn like a moth to Madison's flame. The crowd parts again, this time with whispers and sideways glances. They know what's coming. They've seen this show before. "Madison," I say too loudly. The conversations around us stutter to a halt. Wonderful speech, really touching, especially the part about family always being there for each other. Her smile freezes. "Thank you, Chloe. I'm so glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it. After all, what kind of sister would I be if I didn't show up to celebrate your perfect life, your perfect job, your perfect relationship with our perfect parents?" "Perhaps we should discuss this later," she says through clenched teeth. "Why later? Everyone's here now. Let's talk about how you've never had to struggle for anything, how doors just magically open for you while I'm left knocking until my knuckles bleed." Mother appears at Madison's side, her face tight with anger. "That's enough, Chloe. You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene?" I laugh, and it sounds unhinged even to my own ears. I learned from the best, 25 years of watching the Madison show, always the supporting actress, never the star. The champagne glass in my hand suddenly feels too heavy. Without thinking, I let it fall. The crash silences the room. Tiny crystals scatter across the hardwood floor, catching the light like stars. "There," I say into the shocked quiet. "Now you have something real to talk about at your next perfect party." I turn and walk out, leaving behind the wreckage of both glass and relationships. It's only when I reach my car that I realize my hands are shaking. This is the moment everything changes. This is the day I stop being the other sister. 3 days after Madison's party, I'm hiding in the kitchen at my parents' house, pretending to help Mother with Sunday dinner while she pretends I don't exist. The silence between us is thick enough to cut with the knife I'm using to massacre these carrots. "Those need to be uniform," she says finally, eyeing my handiwork. Madison's bringing her new colleague from the firm. "Everything needs to be perfect." "Of course it does." I deliberately cut the next carrot into jagged chunks. "I saw the article about Madison in the Business Journal," she continues, adjusting the temperature on her precious roast. "Youngest associate to make partner track at Harrison and Wells. Did you see it?" "Must have missed that one. I've got the clipping stuffed in my desk drawer at home, right next to the rejection letter from the same firm." The doorbell chimes. Mother straightens, smoothing her apron. "That'll be them. Try not to—" She trails off, but I hear the rest. "Try not to ruin this like you ruined the party." I follow her to the foyer, where Madison's already introducing her guest to Father. The man's wearing a suit that probably costs more than my monthly rent. His name's James or John or something equally forgettable, and he's looking at Madison like she hung the moon. "Chloe," Madison says, her tone carefully neutral, "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Wouldn't miss it." I force a smile that feels like broken glass. Someone has to keep things interesting. Father clears his throat. "Let's move to the dining room, shall we?" We arrange ourselves around the table like actors on a stage, everyone playing their assigned roles. Mother serves the wine. The expensive bottle, saved for special occasions, special meaning Madison's occasions. "So, Chloe," James or John says, probably trying to be polite. "Madison mentions you're in marketing?" "Customer service," Mother corrects before I can answer. "At that little boutique downtown. Temporary position," I say, gripping my fork. "While I figure things out. She's between opportunities," Madison adds helpfully. "But I'm sure something will come along eventually." I take a long drink of wine. Not all of us can have Daddy's golf buddies smoothing our career paths. The table goes quiet. Madison's face flushes. "I worked hard for my position." "Girls," Father warns, but I'm already leaning forward. "Did you work hard for that corner office too? The one that mysteriously opened up right after Father's donation to the firm's charity foundation?" "That's enough." Mother's voice could freeze hell. "Madison earned everything she has." "Karen," Aunt Lisa speaks up from her end of the table. "Maybe we could—" "No, let's hear it," I interrupt. "Let's talk about how Madison earns everything while I earn nothing. How she deserves everything while I deserve nothing." "Stop it!" Madison hisses. "You're embarrassing yourself." "I heard you and Mother last week," I say, the words tumbling out like poison. "In the kitchen, talking about my lack of ambition, my failure to launch. Tell me, Mother, does it physically pain you to have such a disappointment for a daughter?" James or John looks like he wants to disappear into his soup. Father's staring at his plate. But Mother meets my gaze with steel in her eyes. "If you're quite finished with your performance," she says, "perhaps you'd like to explain to Madison's colleague why you're so intent on sabotaging your sister's success." "Karen!" Lisa tries again, sharper this time. "No, Lisa. She needs to hear this. Your sister has worked tirelessly to build her reputation. She's respected, accomplished, responsible. While you—" She gestures at me dismissively. "You throw tantrums at parties and waste your potential working retail." The words hit like slaps. I push back from the table, chair scraping against hardwood. "At least I earned my job without Daddy's checkbook." Madison stands too. "That's not fair." "You have no idea. What's not fair is spending my entire life as your understudy," I snap. "Always in the wings, watching the Madison show. Well, guess what? I'm done being the backup plan." I grab my purse and head for the door, Lisa calling after me. Behind me, I hear Mother's voice. "This is exactly what I mean. No sense of propriety, no consideration for others." The front door slams behind me with satisfying force. In my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, I notice a text from Ethan. "How's dinner going?" I type back, "Just got my motivation. Time to stop playing nice." The response comes quickly. "What are you planning?" I start the engine, a cold clarity settling over me. Something that'll make the party look like a warm-up act. Because if they want to cast me as the villain in Madison's story, I might as well make it worth their while. The manila envelope sits heavy in my hands, delivered by a private investigator who owed Aunt Lisa a favor. Inside are documents that could shatter Madison's perfect image: bank statements, credit reports, and emails that tell a very different story than the one my sister presents to the world. I spread them across my kitchen table, piecing together the truth like a jigsaw puzzle of betrayal. Madison, the golden child, is drowning in debt. Designer clothes, luxury car payments, and a mortgage she can't afford, all propped up by secret loans from our parents. My phone buzzes. It's Sophie. "You need to get down to Harrison and Wells right now." "Why?" "Because your sister's having a complete meltdown in the conference room. Live stream worthy." I grab my keys, the documents forgotten. 20 minutes later, I'm standing in the marble lobby of Madison's law firm, watching through glass walls as my perfect sister comes undone. She's pacing, mascara streaked, gesturing wildly at James or John from Sunday dinner. Their voices carry through the supposedly soundproof walls. "You can't do this to me," Madison's saying. "I brought in those clients. They're mine." "The partners have concerns about your handling of the Robertson account," he replies. "And given the recent irregularities we've discovered, my father will hear about this." "Your father's influence isn't going to fix this, Madison." I step closer, drawn by the spectacle. Other employees are pretending not to watch, but their phones are suspiciously positioned. "Everything I've done," Madison's voice cracks. "Everything I've sacrificed. The numbers don't lie." He slides a folder across the table. "Neither do the timestamps on those altered documents." My sister stops pacing. For a moment, she looks small, vulnerable, like the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms before mother taught her that perfect daughters don't show fear. "Please," she whispers. "I can't lose this too." Something shifts in my chest. This isn't the Madison I know, the untouchable success, the family favorite. This is someone desperate, cornered. James or John stands. "Security will escort you out. Clear your office by end of day." I duck behind a pillar as Madison storms out, but not before I catch the look on her face, the same lost expression I see in my mirror every morning. My phone rings. "Mother, have you heard from your sister? She's not answering her calls." "No," I lie, watching Madison's retreating back. "Why?" "There are rumors." She pauses. "Never mind. Just, if you see her, tell her to call me immediately. The situation needs to be managed before it affects the family's reputation." Of course. Heaven forbid Madison's fall from grace tarnish the family name. I follow my sister at a distance, watching her fumble with her car keys in the parking garage. She drops them once, twice, hands shaking too badly to manage the lock. "Need help?" I step out of the shadows. Madison whirls, eyes wild. "Come to gloat?" "Depends. Is it everything you hoped it would be? Having everyone's approval? Living up to their expectations?" "You have no idea what it's like," she snarls. "The pressure, the constant scrutiny. Try being measured against perfection your whole life and coming up short every time." She laughs, bitter and broken. "Perfection? You think this is perfection?" She yanks open her car door, pulls out a stack of papers. "Look at your perfect sister now. Bank notices, collection letters, final warnings. They'll bail you out," I say. "They always do." "Not this time." Madison's voice is hollow. "I crossed a line. Used client funds to cover everything. Mother and father can't fix this." I think of the documents on my kitchen table, the ammunition I'd planned to use. But this is better than anything I could have orchestrated. "What will you do?" I ask. She meets my eyes, and for the first time in years, I see my sister instead of my rival. "Run, disappear. What else can I do?" I should feel triumphant. This is what I wanted. Madison's perfect life crumbling, her mask finally slipping. Instead, I feel something else, something uncomfortable and familiar. Madison! Don't! She gets into her car. Just don't! I watch her drive away, my phone buzzing with messages from Mother, from Ethan, from Sophie. But all I can think about is how victory tastes like ash in my mouth. Because in destroying Madison, I might have just destroyed the only person who truly understands what it means to be trapped in this family's web of expectations. The eviction notice feels like a death sentence pinned to my door with surgical precision. 3 months of unpaid rent, the same 3 months I spent plotting Madison's downfall instead of looking for better work. Karma has impeccable timing. My phone lights up with Ethan's call. I let it ring. He's been hovering since Madison's meltdown at the firm, watching me with those concerned designer eyes, probably wondering if I'm next in line for a breakdown. The hallway spins slightly as I slide down against my apartment door. 2 hours until my shift at the boutique, where I'll smile and fold overpriced sweaters while pretending my life isn't unraveling like cheap fabric. My laptop chimes with an email notification. Mother's name appears in bold. Family dinner tonight, non-negotiable. Your sister needs our support during this difficult transition. I laugh until my neighbors probably think I'm crying. Or maybe I am crying. It's getting harder to tell the difference. The boutique is unusually busy when I arrive. Rich women hunting designer bargains like sharks scenting blood. I'm arranging a display when I overhear them. Did you hear about Madison Reynolds? The embezzlement scandal at Harrison and Wells? Karen must be devastated, all that social climbing, just to have her daughter disgrace them like this. I heard she's fled the country. No, she's in rehab. Or was it a mental hospital? Their voices fade as they move to the next rack. I've dropped 3 silk blouses, my hands trembling too badly to fold them properly. Chloe? My manager appears, clipboard in hand. A word? The back office feels like a confessional booth. She doesn't look up from her papers as she speaks. Given recent circumstances, we feel it's best to part ways. Recent circumstances? Your family situation has become somewhat high profile. Our clientele expects discretion. I want to scream that I'm not Madison, that I'm the other one, the invisible sister. Instead, I remove my name tag with numb fingers. Mother answers on the first ring when I call. I can't talk now, dear. We're meeting with the crisis management team about Madison's situation. I lost my job. Well, perhaps if you'd pursued a real career like your sister, she catches herself. We'll discuss this at dinner. The line goes dead. I stand in the parking lot, clutching my phone like a lifeline, when Sophie pulls up in her beaten Volkswagen. Get in, she says. You look like you need a drink. The bar is mercifully empty at 3 in the afternoon. Sophie slides a whiskey across the sticky table. Aunt Lisa called me, she says. Told me about the eviction notice. I'm handling it. Like Madison handled her problems? The whiskey burns going down. Don't. You're both so busy destroying each other, you can't see you're the same person. We are nothing alike. Sophie's phone buzzes. She glances at it, then shows me the screen. It's a news article. Local law firm scandal deepens. Senior partner David Reynolds implicated in daughter's financial fraud. Father's name hits me like a physical blow. The article mentions offshore accounts, falsified documents, years of systematic fraud, all to maintain Madison's illusion of success. Your revenge just took out your whole family, Sophie says quietly. Feel better? I leave her at the bar, driving aimlessly until I find myself outside Aunt Lisa's house. She opens the door before I knock, like she's been waiting. I saw the news, she says. Did you know? About Father's involvement? She steps aside, letting me in. Come see something. In her study, she pulls out an old photo album. There's Madison and me as children, but also older photos. Lisa and Mother as teenagers, standing in front of a house I don't recognize. Your mother wasn't always like this, Lisa says. Before she married your father, before the social climbing and the desperate need for status, she was different. She was free. What happened? The same thing that's happening to you and Madison. This family has a way of turning love into poison. My phone buzzes again. Another email from Mother. Dinner canceled. Your father's attorney advises against family gatherings until the investigation concludes. Lisa touches my shoulder. Stay here tonight. We'll figure something out tomorrow. I nod, suddenly exhausted. The guest room hasn't changed since I was a kid, hiding from thunderstorms and family dinners. In the darkness, I scroll through old photos on my phone. Madison and me at her law school graduation, both of us smiling, before everything imploded. I send her a text. Where are you? The response comes hours later. Somewhere they can't find me. Somewhere they can't pretend anymore. I stare at the words until they blur, wondering when winning started to feel so much like losing. Aunt Lisa's spare room becomes my war room. 3 laptops spread across the bed, each screen tracking a different piece of my family's implosion. Father's legal troubles splashed across news sites. Mother's social media going dark. Madison's digital footprints growing colder by the day. My phone lights up with Ethan's message. Your new website just went live. Sure about this? I stare at the homepage of Reynolds Family Truth, my masterpiece of carefully curated destruction. Emails, bank statements, court documents, all telling the story of my family's carefully constructed lies. The comment section already buzzing with scandal-hungry vultures. Do it, I text back. Lisa appears in the doorway, coffee in hand. You're playing with fire. I'm done being burned. I hit refresh, watching the visitor count climb. They made their choices. And what's your choice, Chloe? Where does this end? Before I can answer, my phone explodes with notifications. Mother's calling, then father's lawyer, then numbers I don't recognize. The first email arrives from James or John at Harrison and Wells. Your father's former colleagues would like to discuss a settlement. Then Mother. What have you done? Call me immediately. Sophie. Holy shit, CNN just picked up the story. I close the laptops, hands steady for the first time in weeks. It ends when they feel what I felt. When they understand what it's like to be powerless. Lisa sets down the coffee. Your mother's outside. The world stops for a moment. What? Has been for 20 minutes, waiting in her car like she's afraid to come in. I move to the window. Mother's Mercedes sits in the driveway, her silhouette visible through tinted glass. As I watch, she steps out, looking smaller than I've ever seen her. I'll give you privacy, Lisa says. But I grab her arm. Stay, please. The doorbell rings. Mother enters like she's walking into enemy territory. Her designer outfit is wrinkled, her makeup slightly smeared. The board is meeting tomorrow, she says without preamble. They're voting to remove your father as partner. Good. Is it? Is this what you wanted? To destroy everything we built? Everything you built on lies, you mean? She sinks onto Lisa's couch, aged decades in days. Madison called. My heart stutters. Where is she? Seattle, working as a barista under a different name. She sounds happy. Mother's voice breaks on the last word. How did we get here, Chloe? You know how. You and father spent years crafting the perfect daughter while treating me like a backup plan. But Madison couldn't handle the pressure, could she? And father couldn't handle her failing. We wanted the best for you both. No, you wanted the best reflection of yourselves. My phone buzzes again. Another news outlet requesting comment. Mother notices. The website, she says. That was clever, using our own weapons against us. Appearances, reputation, social standing. You learned well. I had good teachers. Lisa moves to the kitchen, the clink of cups a counterpoint to the tension. Your father's asking about bankruptcy protection, Mother continues. The firm's clients are fleeing. Our friends won't return calls, even the country club. She laughs hollowly. 25 years of membership, gone with one email. Now you know how it feels to be invisible. She stands suddenly, crossing to where I sit. You were never invisible, Chloe. You were safe, protected from all this pressure, these expectations. We saw what it did to Madison, how it broke her. We thought... She stops, shaking her head. It doesn't matter what we thought. My phone buzzes again. A text from Madison. Mom told you where I am. Please don't. Mother watches me read it. She's healing, finally. Maybe we all need to. It's too late for that. Is it? Look at us. You've won. We're exposed, humiliated, broken, just like you wanted. But has it fixed anything? Lisa returns with tea. Nobody will drink. The silence stretches, broken only by the constant buzz of my phone as the story spreads, as my revenge gains momentum. I can't stop it now, I say finally. Even if I wanted to. Mother nods, gathering her purse. No, you can't. That's the thing about flames, Chloe. Once they start spreading, they burn everything, including the person who lit the match. She leaves as quietly as she came. I return to my laptops, to the growing chaos I've created. But my fingers hover over the keyboards, suddenly uncertain. In Seattle, my sister makes coffee under a false name, finally free of our family's poison. And I sit in Aunt Lisa's spare room, watching that same poison spread through the internet, wondering if revenge tastes like victory or just more ashes. The Seattle coffee shop smells like burnt dreams and cheap espresso. I watch Madison through the window, her dyed black hair pulled back in a messy bun, no trace of the polished lawyer she used to be. She hasn't noticed me yet. I grip my phone, thumb hovering over the publish button that would broadcast her location to every news outlet in the country. Your usual, Sarah? A customer asks her. She smiles, a real smile, not the practiced one from our family photos. My hand shakes. My phone buzzes. Ethan, your father's hearing is tomorrow. Press wants to know if you'll testify. Another message follows from Sophie. CNN's offering 6 figures for an exclusive. They're calling you a whistleblower. The bell chimes as I enter the shop. Madison's back is turned, steaming milk. The whine of the machine covers my approach until I'm at the counter. What can I get? She freezes, pitcher tilting dangerously. Milk spills across the counter, white spreading like a stain. Hello, Madison! Or is it Sarah now? Her colleague moves to help with the spill, but Madison waves her away. Take your break, Jenny, please. We face each other across the coffee-stained counter. Her hands are red from hot water, nails short and practical. No more perfect manicures. How did you find me? Does it matter? I always was better at research than you. She begins wiping the counter, movements mechanical. Are they coming? The reporters? That depends. On what? On whether you deserve this piece you've found. Madison stops cleaning, meets my eyes. And who decides that? You? Our parents? The internet mob waiting to tear apart whatever's left of our family? My phone buzzes again. Mother. Your father's lawyer says the prosecution has new evidence. Please, Chloe, stop this. You ran away, I say. Left me to deal with the aftermath. I survived. Madison throws the rag down. For the first time in my life, I'm actually living instead of performing. No more perfect daughter, no more golden child, no more pressure to be something I never wanted to be. While I stayed invisible, you were free. Her voice cracks. Don't you get it? They focused all their expectations on me, all their dreams and demands. You gotta be yourself. I gotta be nothing. Then be something now, without destroying what's left of us. My phone lights up with another message. Lisa, before you make your final move, there's something you need to know about your mother and me. Madison comes around the counter, close enough that I can smell coffee on her clothes. Remember when we were kids, before all this? We used to hide in the treehouse during their parties, making up stories about running away together. You ran alone, because I was drowning. But this, she gestures at my phone. This isn't justice, Chloe. It's just more poison. The shop door opens. A man in a press badge enters, then another. They've found us. Miss Reynolds? Care to comment on your father's upcoming trial? Madison's face drains of color, her new life crumbling in real time. Over here, it's both sisters. More press arriving now, cameras appearing like weapons. Did you know about the fraud, Madison? Chloe, was this revenge for years of favoritism? Madison grabs my arm, pulls me toward the back exit. Make your choice, Chloe, right now. Are you here as my sister or my executioner? My phone feels heavy. The publish button still waiting. One tap, and Madison's sanctuary burns. One tap, and I win. But winning what? The reporters press closer. Madison's colleague looks terrified. The life my sister built here, the peace she found, it's real. Unlike everything in our past, I open my phone's camera instead, start recording. My name is Chloe Reynolds, I say to the crowd, stepping in front of Madison. And I have a statement about my father's case. Madison's hand finds mine, squeezes once. Behind us, through the back door, I can see an alley. An escape route. The choice crystallizes. I can burn her world down, or I can help her protect it. My phone buzzes one final time. Lisa's message glows. Sometimes the strongest thing isn't destroying what hurt you. It's building something new from the wreckage. The reporters wait, cameras ready. Madison's hand trembles in mine. I make my choice. Lisa's living room becomes a battlefield as Mother paces before the fireplace. Father slumps in an armchair. And Madison stands by the window, still in her coffee-stained apron. I'm perched on the edge of the sofa, Lisa's hand steady on my shoulder. Tell them, Lisa says quietly. Mother stops pacing. Not now, Lisa. Yes, now. Before the hearing tomorrow. Before everything changes again. Madison turns from the window. Tell us what? Your aunt, Mother begins, then stops. Her hands flutter like trapped birds. Lisa was supposed to be the successful one, the one who made it. Father stirs. Karen, don't. She was brilliant, Mother continues, ignoring him. Full scholarship to medical school. Our parents were so proud. And I was the pretty one, the social one, the one who married well. Lisa's grip tightens on my shoulder. But then Lisa got pregnant, Mother says. Senior year of college. And our parents, they couldn't bear the scandal, so they made a choice. They made you choose, Lisa corrects. Tell them the whole truth, Karen. Madison moves closer. What choice? They would pay for Lisa's situation to go away quietly, fund her fresh start somewhere else. But in exchange, I had to be the daughter they wanted, had to marry David, had to maintain our social standing, had to produce children who would… Mother's voice cracks. Who would never disappoint them like Lisa did? The silence feels like glass about to shatter. So you did to us what they did to you, I say. Created the perfect daughter and the spare. I thought I was protecting you, Mother whispers. Madison could handle the pressure, the expectations. And you, Chloe, you were so much like Lisa, so independent, so fierce. I couldn't watch them break you too. But you did break me, Madison says. All those years of performing, of being your puppet. Do you know how many panic attacks I had in my office bathroom? How many pills I took just to keep smiling? Father stands abruptly. I have to go. The lawyers? Sit down, Lisa snaps. For once in your life, face what you've done. He sinks back down, deflated. I gave up my baby, Lisa says into the heavy silence. Gave up my dreams, my future. Moved across the country and watched my sister live the life that was supposed to be mine. And then I watched her do the same thing to her daughters. My phone buzzes. Another reporter. Another request for comment before tomorrow's hearing. I silence it. I wanted to tell you both so many times, Mother says. But the longer it went on, the harder it became. And then Madison was succeeding, and Chloe was struggling. And it felt like history repeating itself. So you chose Madison, I say, like your parents chose you. I chose wrong. Mother's composure finally breaks. I chose wrong every time. Madison crosses the room, stands before our father. Did you know about all of this? He won't meet her eyes. I knew what was expected of me, of all of us. That's not an answer. The firm was everything, he says. When you started struggling, I couldn't let you fail. The money, the fraud. It seemed worth it to maintain the illusion. The illusion is gone, I say, standing. Tomorrow at the hearing, everything comes out. Not just the fraud, but all of it. The whole twisted legacy. Chloe, please, Mother starts, but Madison cuts her off. No, she's right. No more secrets. No more perfect daughters or family shadows or buried truths. She turns to me. But we do it together this time. No more running, no more revenge. Just the truth. Lisa releases my shoulder, moves to stand between her sister and me. Sometimes the only way to heal is to break everything open first. Mother sinks onto the couch, decades of carefully maintained control crumbling. What have I done to my children? The same thing that was done to you, I say. But it stops here, with us. Madison takes my hand, her coffee-stained fingers interlacing with mine. Together we face our parents, our aunt, our shared history of secrets and lies. Tomorrow we'll tell our story. Not the polished version for society pages, not the vengeful exposé I planned, but the real story of two sisters shaped by generations of broken choices, finally choosing to break free instead of breaking each other. The truth might shatter what's left of our family name, but maybe that's what has to happen before anything real can grow from the wreckage. The courthouse steps are crowded with reporters, but they part like water as Madison and I approach. Behind us, mother and father enter separately with their lawyers. Lisa walks between them, head high, carrying decades of secrets about to be unveiled. I adjust my blazer, borrowed from Madison's old closet, smelling faintly of coffee now. She catches my eye, nods once. We've rehearsed our testimony, but truth isn't something you can really rehearse. Inside, the marble halls echo with whispers. I recognize faces from mother's parties, from father's firm, all here to witness our family's final performance. But this time, we're writing the script. Father pleads guilty. The words fall like stones in the quiet courtroom. Behind him, mother's perfect posture finally breaks. When it's my turn to speak, I leave the prepared statement in my pocket. The fraud wasn't just about money, I tell the judge. It was about maintaining an image, about forcing people into roles they never chose. My father's crime was just the visible part of a legacy built on lies. Madison takes the stand next. I was their masterpiece, she says, until I started to crack. Then my father committed fraud to hide the flaws, to keep the illusion perfect, but perfection was always the real fraud. Mother doesn't testify. Instead, she hands the judge a letter, the one her parents wrote when they gave her the ultimatum about Lisa. Evidence of how poison seeps through generations. The sentencing is swift. Father gets 5 years. The firm will recover eventually, under new leadership. The headlines will fade, but families don't heal on judicial timelines. Outside, the reporters surge forward again. This time, Lisa steps up to the microphones. 3 generations of women in my family were forced to choose between truth and acceptance. Today, we choose differently. I feel Ethan's presence before I see him, hovering at the edge of the crowd. He's holding a box of my things from his apartment. Some endings don't need words. Madison touches my arm. Come on, there's somewhere we need to go. We take her beat-up Honda, no more luxury cars, driving until the city fades into suburbs, then into countryside. The old treehouse still stands, weathered but intact, behind our grandparents' abandoned home. I used to come here, Madison says as we climb up, after panic attacks at work, trying to remember who I was before they told me who to be. The floor creaks under us. Sunlight filters through gaps in the boards, dancing across our faces like memories. I found this last week. She pulls out a dusty notebook. Our childhood stories, written in wobbly handwriting. Tales of 2 sisters who could fly, who fought dragons, who never needed anyone's approval to be magnificent. We were braver then, I say. We're braver now. She tears out a page, makes a paper airplane. It sails through the doorway, catching the wind. I'm keeping the coffee shop job, and the crappy apartment, and my real name. What about Mother, the family legacy? Some legacies need to end. She tears out another page. Your turn. I take the notebook, rip out our last story. The paper airplane catches a thermal, soaring higher than the others before disappearing into the trees. My phone buzzes, Sophie sending a link to an article about the trial. The headline reads, Reynolds' sisters break silence, break cycle. Below it, a photo of Madison and me on the courthouse steps, no longer perfect and broken, just real. I got a job offer, I tell Madison. Social media manager for a domestic violence nonprofit. They said my experience with toxic family dynamics was relevant. She laughs. That real laugh from the coffee shop. Look at us, finally writing our own stories. Mother's car appears in the driveway below. Then Lisa's. They stand together in the overgrown grass, looking up at our childhood sanctuary. Not coming closer, not calling out, just witnessing. Think we'll ever be a normal family? I ask. Madison tears the last page from the notebook. Normal's overrated. We tried that. Let's be true instead. She's right. Some things break so they can be rebuilt stronger. Some stories end so better ones can begin. And sometimes revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you. It's about creating something they can't control. I watch our last paper airplane take flight, carrying the ghosts of perfect daughters and family shadows away on the wind. Below us, Mother and Lisa join hands. Above us, clouds scatter like secrets finally set free. We stay in the treehouse until sunset, two sisters writing a new story, one without villains or victims, just people learning to fly with broken wings.
Growing up, the factory was just another member of our family, its hum and buzz as familiar as any relative's voice. Dad started it when I was just a toddler, building it from scratch into a name that every local grocery store wanted on their shelves. After he passed, it was up to me and my brother David to keep the wheels turning. "Gina, you ready to step up? This isn't kids' stuff," David had said on the day we took over. He was older by just 3 years, but sometimes he acted like a gruff old man. "Yeah, I've been ready," I shot back, more confident than I felt. David had always been the face of the business, dealing with suppliers and buyers, while I was comfortable in the background, handling the team and making sure everyone was where they needed to be. We worked well together, our skills complementing each other. Things at the factory were running smoother than ever, but personal life, that was another story. I wasn't exactly social, preferring quiet evenings at home over parties or networking events. That changed when I met Tom. I remember that night clearly. It was one of those rare occasions I let David drag me to a business mixer. I was nursing a drink at the bar, planning my escape, when Tom sidled up beside me. "You look about as thrilled to be here as I am," he said, flashing a grin that caught me off guard. "I'm just here so my brother stops nagging about my hermit lifestyle," I replied, surprised at my own honesty. "Ah, siblings can be like that. I'm Tom, by the way," he said, extending his hand. "Gina," I shook his hand, his grip confident but not overpowering. Tom was a journalist, writing about the local business scene, which apparently included my family's cookie empire. He was clever, using his charm and wit to weave through topics, from mundane to personal. Before I knew it, I was laughing more freely than I had in months. "You really should let me write a piece on you. The heirs behind the cookies or something like that," Tom joked, or at least I thought he was joking. "Let's not," I said, more sharply than I intended. "I prefer keeping my life out of the papers." "Fair enough," he nodded, not pushing further, which I appreciated. Despite my initial resistance, Tom was persistent. He sent me messages, light and teasing at first, gradually becoming more frequent and personal. I found myself waiting for them, eager for the distraction from the everyday stress of business. David noticed the change in me. One evening, as we were closing up the office, he cornered me about it. "Who's the guy?" he asked bluntly. "What guy?" I tried to keep my face neutral. "Don't play dumb. You've been smiling at your phone like it's a love letter. Spill it." "It's Tom, the journalist from the mixer. We've been talking," I admitted, bracing for his reaction. David frowned, his protective instincts flaring up. "Just be careful, Gina. Guys like him, they can smell money and opportunity." 6 months later, I was walking down the aisle toward Tom, my heart full of hope for the future. The prenup was David's idea, and though Tom was not thrilled, he signed it. It was just a piece of paper, I told myself, a precaution that we'd never need. I believed in us, in the promise of what we could be together. Life with Tom started like a whirlwind. Suddenly, I was part of a glamorous world, often at arm's length with photographers snapping our pictures as we attended high-profile events. Tom thrived in the spotlight, using every outing as a chance to boost his online presence. One evening, as we were getting ready for another big gala, Tom was fussing more than usual. He held up 2 ties, a silver and a blue one, turning to me. "Which one?" "The silver is flashy, good for photos. But the blue, it pops on camera," he pondered out loud, genuinely torn. "Go with the blue, it suits you better," I said, keeping it simple, my mind more on the comfort of my heels than his tie color. Tom nodded and went with the blue, but not before taking a few selfies in the mirror. He posted them on his blog with the caption, "Which tie? Help me choose." He smiled at his phone as responses flooded in. At these events, I felt out of place. While Tom schmoozed, I often found myself tucked away in a corner, observing the crowd rather than being part of it. He would come over, every so often, to check on me, each time a bit more animated as the wine flowed. "Gina, you should try mingling a bit. People are dying to know more about the woman behind the cookie empire." Tom nudged one night, his speech slightly slurred. I nodded, not wanting to argue. It was his night, after all. As he walked away, I overheard him telling someone about his expansive lifestyle that our marriage had apparently granted him. It irked me how he spun our life together into content for public consumption. As the months rolled on, the pattern continued. Tom's blog grew, fueled by the snippets of our life he broadcasted. I became more reclusive, retreating into the sanctuary of my work at the factory. The cookie business was booming, and I threw myself into it, finding solace in the familiar chaos of production lines and staff meetings. David noticed the change in me. During one of our late-night check-ins at the factory, he leaned against a packing machine, a concerned look on his face. "You've been quiet. Everything okay with Tom?" he asked, his voice cutting through the noise of the warehouse. "It's fine. Just the usual ups and downs," I shrugged, not wanting to admit how strained things had become. "Gina, remember what I said. Money changes people. Be careful," David warned, his tone serious. "I know, David. I'm keeping my eyes open," I reassured him, though I felt anything but reassured. As I drove home that night, the factory's lights fading in my rearview mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that the glamorous life Tom so loved was more of a facade, and I was trapped behind it, playing a part one never auditioned for. We worked well like that, but when the need for a new finance director came up, it fell on me to find the right fit. That's how Emily came into the picture. She was sharp and had a knack for numbers that impressed even David, which wasn't easy. Soon enough, she was not just crunching numbers at work, but also a regular at our home during the late-night strategy sessions David and I held. Tom usually just hovered around these meetings, glass of wine in hand, barely hiding his boredom. He never really got the business, nor did he try to. But with Emily's arrival, there was a shift. I noticed how his eyes followed her around, lighting up whenever she spoke about financial forecasts or new funding strategies. However, Tom's interest seemed more personal than professional. I brushed it off initially, chalking it up to his usual charm. He always did enjoy charming intelligent women, and Emily fit that bill. Yet, something in my gut twisted a bit each time I saw them laughing together a little too closely for comfort. One evening, after Emily had left and Tom was in his study supposedly working on an article, I decided to clear the air. "Tom, got a sec?" I leaned on the doorframe of his study, watching him stare at his screen. He glanced up, a little startled. "Sure, what's up?" "It's about Emily. You guys seem to be hitting it off," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral but firm. Tom raised an eyebrow, his fingers pausing over the keyboard. "What do you mean? We're just talking shop. You know, business." "Yeah, I get that. Just seems like you're really into those conversations. Just making sure it's all it is," I pushed, needing to hear him say it. He chuckled, a bit too casually. "Gina, you're worrying about nothing. She's smart, got good ideas. That's all I'm interested in." As Tom went back to his typing, I couldn't shake off the discomfort. His reassurances did little to soothe the doubts creeping up on me. I found myself confiding in David more than ever during our late-night sessions after Emily and the other staff had left. "Everything okay with you and Tom?" David asked one night as we reviewed some shipment schedules. "It's fine. He's busy with his trips, and I'm here with the cookies." I shrugged, trying to sound nonchalant. David frowned, not buying it. "You know, I don't like that guy much. Always thought he was a bit slick." "Just watch yourself, Gina." "I am, David." "Thanks," I said, grateful for his concern but feeling the weight of my marital woes grow heavier. Despite this, life at home and work kept marching on. Tom's travels for whatever stories he was chasing became more frequent, and oddly enough, I was relieved. His trips meant fewer awkward dinners and less tension about him and Emily. I focused on the company, pushing those nagging thoughts aside. The factory was gearing up for a major expansion, and I threw myself into the work. The company was celebrating a record-breaking quarter, and David and I decided to throw a big party for the whole team. The venue was decked out, the music was lively, and the air was buzzing with laughter and chatter. Tom was there too, of course. He had his phone out, capturing everything for his blog. "This is going to be great content," he'd said, winking at me as he filmed the decorations and the crowd. I forced a smile, still uneasy about broadcasting our personal lives. As the party went on, I needed a break from the noise and slipped out to the quieter foyer. That's when I heard them, whispers that weren't meant for my ears. Curiosity piqued, I edged closer to the partition, my heart pounding in my chest. There was Tom in a far too intimate embrace with Emily. The sight knocked the wind out of me, but it was their words that cut deeper. "Just wait till Gina's money hits our account. We'll be out of here, away to our dream house abroad," Tom whispered, his voice thick with greed and deception. Emily giggled, her voice tinged with contempt. "Can you believe how clueless she is? What a stupid chicken." The room spun as their laughter pierced through me. They were using me, mocking me. The pain was sharp, raw, and it burned through my shock. I stood frozen, the urge to confront them wrestling with the need to protect what was left of my dignity. I chose the latter, stepping back into the shadows before they could see me. My mind raced as I walked back to the main hall. I needed support, I needed David. I found him chatting with a group of employees, his laughter a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. Pulling him aside, I whispered urgently, "David, we need to talk. Now." His face fell as he saw my expression. We found a quiet corner, and I poured out everything. The affair, the plans, their cruel words. David's face hardened with each word, his protective fury barely contained. "That son of a..." David's hands balled into fists. "And Emily? I can't believe she'd do this. We need to be smart, David. We can't let them destroy everything we've built," I said, my voice shaky but resolute. "You're right. We'll get the auditors on this first thing tomorrow. And a detective. We'll do this quietly, gather all the evidence we need to nail them both," David said, his tone ice cold. The rest of the night was a blur. I went through the motions, smiling and chatting, while inside, a storm raged. Tom came up to me several times, oblivious to the fact that I knew everything. Each time, it took all my strength not to reveal anything. The morning after the party, I was at the office early. David had arranged everything by the time I arrived. "They'll be here in an hour. I've told them it's a routine check, nothing to raise suspicions," he informed me as I stepped into his office. "Good, we can't tip them off." "Not yet," I replied, trying to steady my nerves. The auditors were thorough. They set up in one of the conference rooms with stacks of financial statements, invoices, and bank records. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept drifting to the auditors and what they might find. Around mid-afternoon, one of the auditors called us into the conference room. "We need to discuss our preliminary findings," he said, his expression grave. The room felt suddenly too small, the air too tight. "What is it?" David asked, his voice tense. The lead auditor spread out several documents on the table. We found numerous irregular transactions. Large sums have been transferred to an external account over the past few months. Here, and here. He pointed to the highlighted lines on a bank statement. I felt a chill run down my spine. Whose account? I managed to ask, bracing myself for the answer. It's registered under Thomas Landon, the auditor replied, looking from me to David. My worst fears confirmed, I fought to keep my composure. What about any links to Emily Rogers? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. We're still looking into that, but given the patterns, it's likely we'll find a connection, the auditor answered. The next few days were a blur of meetings with lawyers and more sessions with the auditors. Each new piece of evidence was a stab in the heart, but also a building block towards the fortress of my revenge. I knew I had to be strong, for myself and for our family's company. As the auditors wrapped up their investigation, the private detective David had hired came in with his findings. He laid out photographs and receipts on David's desk, pictures of Tom buying a luxury car and expensive jewelry, not for me but for Emily. And there's more, the detective said grimly. They've booked tickets to Mexico, 4 months from now. Looks like they plan to drain your accounts and run. David and I exchanged a glance, the final pieces clicking into place. He's also signed a contract with a major media company in Mexico, the detective added. The betrayal was deeper than I had imagined. Not only was Tom stealing from me, but he was also planning a whole new life with Emily, funded by the money he took from my company. Armed with this information, we finalized our plan. Legal and financial traps were set quietly, ensuring that when Tom and Emily tried to make their move, they'd find themselves with nowhere to go. The end of the year was approaching, and it brought with it the perfect opportunity to set my plan into motion. I decided to host a pre-Christmas celebration for the company. It was an annual event, typically a time for cheer and toasts, but this year, it was the stage for my carefully crafted retribution. The venue was a well-known restaurant, beautifully decorated with twinkling lights and festive garlands. Employees milled around, laughing and chatting, completely unaware of the drama about to unfold. Tom arrived, looking as dashing as ever and completely oblivious to my plans. He went straight to work, filming the decorations and guests, broadcasting live to his blog followers. Looking stunning, babe, Tom said, coming over to give me a quick peck on the cheek before returning to his video. Thanks, Tom. Make sure you get good shots, I said, my tone light, masking the storm inside. The evening progressed smoothly, and after dinner, it was time for the main event. I took the stage to give the annual awards to the employees. This was it. My heart was pounding as I called Emily up first. Let's hear it for Emily Rogers, everyone. This year's standout employee, I announced, my voice steady as applause filled the room. Emily beamed as she walked up, clearly pleased by the recognition. I handed her a beautifully wrapped gift box. Open it later, I whispered, and she nodded, oblivious to the trap. After a few more awards, it was Tom's turn. I saved him for last, making sure the cameras were still rolling. And now, for a special recognition. Tom, could you join me up here? I called out, my voice echoing through the room. Tom looked surprised but pleased as he made his way to the stage. What's this about? He whispered, as he joined me under the spotlight. Just a little something to show my appreciation, I said, handing him a similar gift box. Why don't you open it now, for everyone to see? Tom, ever the performer, played up his curiosity for the cameras, tearing into the wrapping paper. The moment the contents were revealed, his face went white. Divorce papers and photos of him with Emily. The room fell silent, all eyes on Tom. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He looked around, desperate, but there was no escape. And Emily, why don't you open your gift now too? I called out, my voice clear and strong. With shaky hands, Emily opened her box, pulling out receipts for the car Tom bought her, along with bank statements detailing the stolen money. Tom, usually so composed and confident, stood frozen. The live cameras, still broadcasting to his blog, captured every moment of his disgrace. There was nowhere for him to hide, no narrative he could spin that would undo the truth laid bare before his audience. I took a deep breath and addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're witnessing tonight is not just a revelation but a betrayal of the worst kind. I began, my voice steady but charged with emotion. For years, this man, I pointed to Tom, and his accomplice, my gaze shifted to Emily, have been siphoning funds from our company. They planned to flee to Mexico, thinking they could escape the consequences of their actions. The silence was palpable, the crowd hanging on every word. Tom, regaining some of his wits, blurted out in a desperate attempt to deflect the blame. It was all her idea. She seduced me into doing this. The accusation seemed to snap Emily out of her shock. She stormed onto the stage, her face contorted with rage. You liar! You came to me with the plan. You said we'd be free and rich. She lunged at him, her hands flying as she slapped and scratched, her voice piercing the stunned silence. The scuffle on stage was chaotic, with Tom trying to deflect Emily's blows and defend himself, both verbally and physically. The spectacle was not just being recorded but streamed live, drawing a massive online audience. David came up beside me, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. He then stepped forward, his voice booming over the microphone, cutting through the cacophony. Enough, he shouted. The police are already on their way. Both of you will face charges for fraud and theft. The evidence is overwhelming, and justice will be served. The police arrived minutes later, their entrance adding to the drama. They separated Emily and Tom, handcuffing them amidst the flash of cameras and the murmur of the shocked employees. This whole ordeal, broadcasted live, was a spectacle no one could have anticipated, drawing viewers from all over. As the police led them away, the room burst into whispers and murmurs, the employees processing the night's shocking events. I stood there, amidst the chaos, feeling a mix of relief and profound sadness. What had started as a festive celebration had turned into a public unveiling of betrayal. The live feed was still running, and I realized the camera was focused on me. Gathering my composure, I addressed the audience directly. Thank you for your support. Tonight was about bringing the truth to light, no matter how painful. We will rebuild, and we will emerge stronger. The support was immediate and overwhelming. Comments poured in, messages of solidarity and encouragement flooding the live feed. People praised my courage and even suggested I start my own blog to share my side of the story. David squeezed my shoulder. You did what you had to do, Gina. It's over now. But as I looked around at the remnants of the evening, the decorations that now seemed garish, the empty stage that had just hosted a confrontation, I knew it wasn't over. This was just the end of a chapter. There was much to do, relationships to mend, and a company to heal. I filed for divorce immediately and sued Tom for the financial havoc he'd wreaked through his deceit and fraud. The court ruled in my favor, and Tom was ordered to pay a hefty sum in compensation, money that would help stabilize the company's finances and ensure our employees didn't suffer because of his greed. Emily's fate was sealed in court. She was convicted of embezzlement, had to return all the stolen funds, and lost her financial license. The industry ban was the final nail in her professional coffin. Meanwhile, Tom's life unraveled spectacularly. The Mexican media company he'd planned to escape to terminated his contract when they caught wind of his criminal activities. No one else wanted to touch him, his reputation toxic and his professional network crumbled. His followers abandoned him, disgusted by his actions, forcing him to shut down his blog. One afternoon, as I was reviewing the quarterly performance reports in my office, Tom showed up unannounced. He looked defeated, a shadow of the man he once was. Gina, I'm so sorry. Can we talk? His voice was shaky, his eyes not meeting mine. I stood firm, the memories of his betrayal still fresh. There's nothing to talk about, Tom. You should leave, I said sternly. Please, Gina. I've lost everything. I just need a chance to explain. he pleaded, taking a step closer. I didn't budge. You had your chances, Tom. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to run. Without waiting for his response, I called security. Please escort Mr. Landon out. He was just leaving. Watching him being led away, I felt a chapter firmly closing behind me. I turned back to my desk, where the future lay, a future that was looking brighter each day. David came into my office, having heard about Tom's attempt to see me. You okay? He asked, looking concerned. I'm fine, David. Better than fine, actually, I replied, a genuine smile spreading across my face. It's over, and I'm ready to move forward. That's the spirit, David said with a grin. Speaking of moving forward, how's the blog idea coming along? I nodded enthusiastically. Actually, I'm thinking bigger. A video blog or vlog. To connect directly with our customers and share our journey. Transparency, recovery, innovation, make it a platform for dialogue. David's eyes lit up. Brilliant idea. It puts a face to the name, makes it personal. Let's not just bounce back, let's leap forward. As the vlog took shape, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was not just rebuilding a company, I was creating a community. Each video we posted built more engagement, more support. People appreciated the honesty and the efforts we were making to ensure such betrayals never happened again. My life took a weird turn the day Mrs. Baker walked into our store, right when I was stacking some plates. I grew up here, Since I was a kid, I've been helping my parents at our family tableware shop, learning the ropes of running a small business. It was cozy, filled with the clink of porcelain and the warm smiles of regulars. But that day, something was different. Emma, my dad called out from behind the counter, waving me over. Mrs. Baker, the owner of the bakery next door, was with him, a stern look on her face that didn't match her usual cheery public persona. I wiped my hands on my apron and approached them. What's up, Dad? Mrs. Baker here has a proposal, Dad said, shooting a glance that seemed a mix of confusion and curiosity. She didn't waste any time. Emma, I've been talking to your father about a potential partnership between our two businesses. I raised an eyebrow, crossing my arms. A partnership? Like what? Turning the bakery and the shop into some sort of megastore. Exactly, she nodded sharply. And there's more. I think it would be a good idea if you and my son, Michael, got to know each other better. I choked on my own breath. Wait, what? Michael? Why? It's simple, she snapped, her voice firm, almost commanding. Michael and you getting together would make this business merger smooth. It makes sense, Emma. Think about the potential. I looked over at Dad, who seemed just as stunned but intrigued. You're talking about a marriage merger? Like in the movies? Yeah, Mrs. Baker continued. It's all for the business, sweetheart. You two could be a power couple, the face of a new joint venture. It's practical. Dad nudged me gently. Emma, just meet him. No harm in that, right? I sighed, looking from my dad's hopeful face to Mrs. Baker's stern one. Fine. I'll meet him. But I'm not promising anything more than that. Good, Mrs. Baker smiled, her expression softening just a bit. He's coming by tomorrow. You'll see, it might work out. The next day, true to her word, Michael came into the shop. He was taller than I expected, with a kind smile and a way of moving that was confident but not overbearing. We talked over coffee, surrounded by the clinks of our store, and I had to admit, he was nothing like his mother, polite, funny, and surprisingly down-to-earth. So, your mom tells me we're supposed to save the family businesses by getting hitched. I joked, trying to keep the mood light. He laughed, a genuine, hearty sound. Yeah, she has a way of putting things, doesn't she? Look, I know this is weird, but I think we could make a good team, in business at least. I found myself nodding, more taken with him than I wanted to admit. Maybe. If the business side of things works out. As he left, I couldn't shake the feeling that this crazy idea might just work, or at the very least, it wouldn't be boring. Marrying Michael had felt like stepping into a whirlwind. Before I knew it, our businesses were smashed together into one big store. It sounded good on paper, but living it was another story. Mrs. Baker had her fingers in every pie, literally and figuratively. It wasn't long before she started calling the shots at the store, her store now, I guess. One Monday morning, I was setting up the display when Mrs. Baker stomped in, her heels clicking loudly against the tile floor. "Emma, those plates go in the back. The front is for the pastries now," she barked, not even a good morning. I bit back my irritation. "Sure, Mrs. Baker. I'll move them. And call me Janice, we're family now," she said, but it sounded less like a warm invitation and more like a command. I shuffled the plates to the back, muttering under my breath. The change was more than just physical space, it was in everything. I wasn't just selling tableware now. I was up to my elbows in flour and sugar, helping with the pastries when the baker called in sick, which seemed to happen more than it should. One afternoon, while I was wiping down tables, Michael came over, a rare sight since he mostly handled the bakery's supply side. "How's it going, Em?" he asked, leaning on a clean table. I shrugged, keeping it cool. "Just peachy. I never imagined I'd know so much about pastries." He chuckled, scratching his neck. "Yeah, Mom can be a bit much. But she knows the business, you know?" I nodded, though I didn't completely agree. "Sure, she knows her stuff. But I feel more like I'm just another one of her employees, not a partner." Michael frowned slightly. "It's just the way she does things, Em. Give it time, she'll ease up." I doubted that, but changed the subject. We talked a bit more about some minor tweaks to the menu before he was called away. Things didn't ease up. If anything, they got tighter. I found myself staying later, cleaning up after closing, something I never had to worry about before. One evening, I was finishing up, and Mrs. Baker was counting the day's earnings, her lips a thin line. "You missed a spot on the counter, Emma. And make sure those trays are spotless," she ordered without looking up from her papers. I cleaned the spot she mentioned, my hands moving automatically. "Janice, I was thinking, maybe we could try some new designs for the tableware, to match the pastries?" She barely glanced at me. "No need. The current ones sell fine. Focus on what's selling, Emma. That's the bottom line." Her words stung a bit. I was used to having ideas, being part of decisions. Now, it felt like I was just here to follow orders. I missed the old days, the old store, my old life. Moving in with my husband's parents wasn't my idea of a perfect setup, but Janice insisted it made sense. "Why waste money on rent when you can live here and help out more at the store?" she had said. Her house was just a short walk from our joint business, making it all too easy for me to spend most of my waking hours there. At first, things seemed okay. The bakery and store were booming, and revenue was up. I was busy, sure, but it felt like we were all pulling together for a common cause. That was until I realized the price I was paying. I had to drop out of college. "You won't need a degree to sell plates and pastries," Janice told me, dismissing my dreams as if they were crumbs on the table. One chilly morning, as I was arranging a new batch of ceramic teapots that had just arrived, Janice marched in, her eyes scanning the store like a general assessing their troops. "Emma, why are these teapots here?" "I told you, the new pastry display goes in this section," she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the morning calm. I sighed, pushing down the irritation bubbling inside me. "Sorry, Janice. I thought they'd catch more eyes here. I'll move them." She watched me, her arms crossed. "Look, Emma, I appreciate your ideas, but we need to focus on what sells. Pastries are selling, not these fancy teapots." I moved the teapots to the back, feeling a sting of frustration. It was becoming clear that my role here was more about following orders than bringing any of my own ideas to the table. Later that day, Dad came by the store. It was becoming a rare occurrence. He looked around quietly, a somber look on his face. We found a quiet corner, and I asked him straight up, "Dad, why don't you come by much anymore?" He sighed, looking tired. "Emma, things have changed. Janice has, well, she's taken over completely. I'm just in the way here." I frowned, confused and a bit angry. "But it's our store too. Can't you talk to her?" Dad shook his head. "It's not that simple. The contract we signed. I didn't look at it close enough. It's all tilted in her favor. I'm basically out of the loop." I clenched my fists, feeling betrayed. "That's not fair, Dad. We should do something about it." He patted my shoulder, trying to smile. "It's business, Emma. I guess I just got outplayed. Just try to get along, okay?" I nodded, though resentment simmered inside me. After Dad left, I went back to work, my thoughts chaotic with anger and helplessness. A few days later, Janice caught me rearranging some of the displays to make room for new stock. "Emma, what are you doing? I didn't approve this change," she snapped, her eyes narrowing. I stood my ground this time. "Janice, we need to make room for new stock. These items aren't selling. We can't just push pastries, people come here for variety." She stepped closer, her voice low and harsh. "Listen here, I know what I'm doing. This isn't some little game, Emma. It's a business. My business now. You do well to remember that." Her words hit hard, and I was left speechless as she walked away, leaving me to stew in my frustration. When the pandemic hit, it threw everyone into chaos, our store included. Sales nosedived as lockdowns kept our regulars tucked away at home. I remember standing in the middle of the eerily quiet store, feeling the weight of impending doom. It was clear we had to pivot, and fast, or we'd be another casualty of the crisis. One morning, I approached Janice, who was busy flipping through inventory lists that looked more depressing by the day. "Janice, we should take the store online," I suggested, trying to sound as confident as possible. "We can set up a delivery system. It might help us keep going until all this blows over." She looked up, skeptical. "Online, huh? And who's going to set that up? You?" "Yes, me. I've been reading about it. It's not that hard, and I think it's worth a shot," I responded, feeling my resolve harden. With a heavy sigh, Janice finally conceded. "Fine. Do what you can. But this better work, Emma." I threw myself into the project, learning everything from website design to logistics. Surprisingly, or maybe not, the online shift was a hit. Orders started rolling in, and it wasn't long before we were busier than we had been in months. I managed everything, from updating the website daily to coordinating with couriers, and it felt good to be proactive, to steer the ship through stormy waters. As the pandemic waned and life slowly edged back to normal, I had a new idea. "Janice, why don't we keep focusing on online sales and individual orders? It could be a new direction for us," I proposed one evening as we were tallying up the day's sales, which had shown a promising upturn thanks to the online orders. Janice didn't even look up from the books. "No, Emma. We're going back to how things were. That's enough of this online nonsense." It was a temporary fix, not a new business model. Michael was there too, nodding along to his mother's words. "Mom's right, Em. People will want to come back in person. Let's not fix what isn't broken." I bit my tongue, holding back a retort. It was frustrating. We had a golden opportunity to evolve, but they were too set in their ways to see it. A few weeks later, as we officially halted the online operations and focused on in-store traffic, I overheard Janice talking to a group of her friends in the store, laughing and boasting. Yes, it was quite a challenge, but I managed to keep the business afloat during the pandemic. We had to adapt, of course. I paused behind a shelf, my hands clenched into fists. The nerve of her, taking credit for my sleepless nights, my ideas, my hard work. It stung, but I swallowed my anger. Arguing wouldn't change her attitude, and it wasn't worth the drama. It was a gloomy Tuesday, rain pelting down so hard it drummed against the store windows like 1,000 tiny drums. Most folks were smart enough to stay indoors, but the shop was open, just in case. I was tidying up some displays near the entrance, lost in thought, when the bell over the door jingled sharply. A small girl, no older than 8, stood dripping in the doorway. Her coat was soaked through, hair plastered to her head, eyes wide and scared. I dropped the cloth I was holding and rushed over. "Hey there, sweetie, come on in. You're soaking wet," I said, guiding her gently inside. She shivered, clutching a small backpack to her chest. I got lost. I can't find my mom." "Don't worry, we'll find her, okay? Let's get you warmed up first," I reassured her, fetching a towel from the back to dry her off. As I was rubbing her hair dry, Janice stormed over, frowning deeply. "What's this, Emma? Why is this child here? She's dripping all over the floor." I frowned back, protective over the little girl. "She's lost, Janice. She needs help." Janice scoffed, waving dismissively at the girl. "She's probably just a beggar. We don't need this kind of trouble. Get her out of here before she scares away any customers." I stood up, feeling my temper rise. "She's a child, Janice. It's pouring outside. We can't just throw her out. Do I have to remind you that this is a business, not a charity?" Janice snapped, glaring at both of us. Before I could argue further, Michael walked in, catching the tail end of our conversation. "What's going on here?" His mom explained with an impatient gesture towards the girl. "Emma wants to turn the store into a homeless shelter. I say she goes out the same way she came in." Michael looked at the girl, then at me, and sighed. "Emma, Mom's right. We can't start taking in strays. It's bad for business." As the argument heated up, I made a decision. I couldn't leave her out there alone. Ignoring Janice's protests, I picked up the phone and dialed the local police station. The police arrived quickly, given the weather and the circumstance. One of the officers wrapped the girl in a warm blanket I had brought from the back. They thanked me for keeping her safe and took down some information. Before she left, the girl hugged me tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. Watching her leave with the officers, hopefully to be reunited with her family soon, I felt a mix of relief and frustration. Janice walked over, her expression hard. "I'll be docking your pay for the day, Emma. And you can clean up this mess yourself," she said coldly. I was too tired to argue. The rest of the day passed in a blur of scrubbing and silent treatment from Janice and Michael. Their attitude stung, but holding that scared, grateful girl in my arms, I knew I'd done the right thing, no matter what they thought. It was a regular Thursday morning at the store, just a week after the rainy day incident with the lost little girl. I was rearranging some of the newer pastries when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up, expecting another customer, but instead, I saw a well-dressed man I'd never seen before. He walked straight to me, his expression serious yet friendly. "Good morning," he greeted. "Are you Emma?" "That's me," I replied, a bit puzzled. "Can I help you with something?" "Yes, actually. I'm Thomas. I don't know if you remember, but you helped my daughter last week when she was lost. She hasn't stopped talking about how kind you were." I blinked in surprise, remembering the little girl's tight hug. "Oh, yes, of course. I'm just glad she's safe now. How is she?" "She's great, thanks to you," he smiled. "I actually came here to thank you personally and also to offer my help, if you ever need it." I was taken aback. "That's very kind of you, but I don't know what you could help with." Thomas handed me his card. "I'm a lawyer. I specialize in business and contract law. After what my daughter told me about how you treated her, I thought maybe if you ever need legal advice or anything, I could be of service." I stared at the card, then at Thomas. A lawyer could be useful, especially now. Actually, there might be something. But it's a bit complicated. Thomas nodded, gesturing toward a quieter corner of the shop. "I'm all ears." We sat down at one of the tables, and I briefly explained the situation with Janice and the store, how things had changed after the merger, my reduced role, and my father's situation. Thomas listened intently, occasionally nodding. "It sounds like you've been put in a tough spot. If you can get me the merger documents, I can take a look, see if there's anything that can be done legally to renegotiate your position or at least get you some more control." I fetched the documents from my file at home and brought them to Thomas the next day. He promised to look over them and get back to me as soon as possible. True to his word, a few days later, he called me into his office to discuss his findings. "Emma, I've gone through everything," Thomas began as soon as I sat down in his office. "There are a few areas where the agreement seems heavily biased against your father. It looks like there were some oversight and possibly misleading information when he signed." My heart pounded with a mix of anger and relief. "So, what can we do?" Thomas leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "We can challenge the agreement based on these discrepancies. It's not a guaranteed win, but it's a start. You have a right to fight this, Emma." I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. "Let's do it. It's time I took a stand." After meeting with Thomas, my mind was a whirlwind of doubt and guilt. Was I doing the right thing by challenging my husband and his family? The thought of ruining their lives weighed heavily on me as I headed home. But as soon as I stepped through the door, the scene that greeted me swept all my doubts away. The house was bustling with noise and guests. It was our wedding anniversary, an event I had completely forgotten about in the midst of all the chaos. As I hesitated at the entrance, trying to process the celebration, Janice spotted me. Her face flushed from drink, she stormed over, her voice loud and slurring. "There you are, wandering the streets when you should be here serving your guests," she shouted. I tried to apologize. "Janice, I'm sorry, But before I could finish, she hurled an empty plate in my direction. It smashed against the wall right next to my head, shards scattering across the floor. The room fell silent, all eyes on us. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and rising anger. Then Michael staggered over, wine glass in hand. He sloshed the contents onto my hands and blouse. "Clean yourself up, you're a mess," he slurred, chuckling. Janice joined in the laughter, and a few of the guests murmured uncomfortably, not sure how to react. That was the last straw. I felt something inside me snap, the last thread of tolerance for this life I was living. I straightened up, wiping my hands on my skirt, my voice steady and loud. "Enough," I declared, silencing the room. "I've been to a lawyer, and I'm filing for a divorce." The shock was palpable. Michael and Janice froze, their smiles fading. "Who do you think you are?" Janice hissed, stepping closer. "I am someone who no longer accepts being treated this way," I continued, my voice clear and confident despite the trembling in my knees. "I am protesting the merger agreement. There has been fraud, and I've already sent the documents to the authorities and the court." I could see the fear flicker in Janice's eyes, her tipsy bravado slipping. "You can't do this to us," she stammered. "I also intend to seek financial compensation for all the abuse," I added, not letting her interrupt. I turned, heading upstairs to pack my things. Behind me, I could hear Janice scrambling after me, her tone suddenly changing to one of desperation. "Emma, please, let's talk about this. We can sort something out." I stopped at the top of the stairs, facing her one last time. Pulling out Thomas's business card, I held it out. "You can discuss it with my lawyer. From now on, that's how we communicate." Packing my bag was quick. I didn't have much I wanted to take from that house. With every piece of clothing, every personal item, I felt a bit more free. After what felt like an eternity of legal battles and emotional upheaval, the final court hearing was more than just a procedural event. It was the day I reclaimed my life and my family's business. Standing beside Thomas, my lawyer, I watched with a steely resolve as the judge delivered the verdict that would set everything right. "The court finds in favor of the plaintiff," the judge announced, his voice echoing in the silent courtroom. It is clear from the evidence presented that the defendant engaged in fraudulent activities to secure control of the business. Therefore, the original merger agreement is hereby nullified, and full ownership rights will revert to the plaintiff and her father. Janice, my former mother-in-law, sat stiffly, her face unreadable. Beside her, Michael looked down, unable to meet my gaze. The court also imposed a hefty fine on Janice and ordered her to pay financial compensation, which conveniently matched the value of her shares in our business. It was more than justice, it was poetic. The business that my father and I had built with love and hard work was ours again, and Janice was out, forced to find employment elsewhere due to the financial ruin that her greed had brought upon her. Back at the store, Dad and I wasted no time in making changes. Replacing the generic fittings with our cozy decor, we brought back the community vibe that had defined our place in the neighborhood. As I reintegrated into the day-to-day operations, I also decided to pick up where I had left off with my education. Going back to college felt right. I knew now more than ever how important knowledge and education were, especially if I wanted to take our business to new heights. Life without Michael was strangely liberating. After the divorce, he had pleaded for forgiveness, hoping to salvage our marriage, but too much had happened, and my decision was firm. One day, a familiar face popped into the shop. The girl I had helped during the rainstorm came in, holding her mother's hand. She ran up to me as soon as she saw me, a bright smile on her face. "Miss Emma," she exclaimed, her voice echoing around the shop. "Hey there." I crouched down to her level. "How are you?" "I'm good. Mommy says we can get a big cake from here for my birthday." "Absolutely," I laughed, glancing up at her mother, who smiled warmly at me. "We'll make sure it's the best cake you've ever had." As they wandered off to pick out some pastries, I straightened up, watching them go. This was why I fought so hard. Not just for me or for my dad, but for these moments of joy and community. My name's Erica. Grew up poor, which meant you either got tough or got left behind. My family wasn't much, just me, Ma, and Pa. We scraped by in a cramped house, the walls thin as paper. Early on, Ma put a needle in my hand, saying, "Stitch your own path, girl." And so I did. School was just the place I waited till I could get back to sewing. Teachers talked about math and history, but my mind was on fabrics and patterns. By 15, I was mending jeans and jackets for folks in the neighborhood. Life took a real turn when I met Tom. He was the cousin of my best bud, Sarah. I remember that day clear as crystal. We were at Sarah's family barbecue, and he was there, flipping burgers and laughing loud enough to scare the birds. "Hey, Erica." Sarah waved me over, a big grin on her face. "Come meet my cousin, Tom. He's been dying to meet the girl who fixed his favorite jacket." Tom wiped his hands on his apron and reached out. "That was you? Hell, you saved my life with that fix." I laughed, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. "It was just a few stitches." "A few stitches," she says. Tom chuckled, giving me a look like I just pulled a rabbit out of a hat. "You're too modest, Erica." We hit it off straight away. He was easygoing, the kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back and make a joke while doing it. The more we talked, the more I liked him. He was genuine, a rare thing in this world. Tom was a truck driver, always on the road. Said it was lonely sometimes, watching the world through a windshield with no one to share the view. "It's just me and the long haul, but I'd love someone to come back to," he admitted one evening, the sunset making shadows dance on his face. Tom was the kind of man who never said no, especially to his family. He'd often joke about it, saying how his big sister Linda got everything she ever wanted from him. "She's got me wrapped around her finger, but don't you worry, Erica. I've got plenty of yes left for you." I'd roll my eyes and jab back, "Better save the best ones for me, Tom." He'd laugh and pull me close, and in those moments, I knew we were right for each other. He was kind and a pushover for sure, but me? I was the punchy one, and together, we balanced out just right. Love hit fast, and we married just as quickly. It felt right, like stepping into a story that was meant just for us. Life with Tom was never dull, even when the road took him away more often than I liked. He was out there driving his truck, traversing from one city to another, while I kept the home fires burning and the sewing machine humming. You could say I had become quite the thrifty one over the years. Every penny from my sewing gigs went straight into a jar, and before we knew it, there was $20,000 saved up. It wasn't just pocket change, it was our ticket to something bigger. One evening, Tom rolled in, tired but happy to be home. I was stitching up a storm in the corner of our living room turned makeshift studio. The hum of the machine paused as I made my pitch. Tom, what if we stop just making ends meet and start planning to get ahead? I've been saving up. We've got enough to put down on a new truck. Tom, who was halfway through a sandwich, stopped and looked up. You serious, Erica? That's a lot of dough. You've been stashing away that much? Yeah, and it's just sitting there. Imagine if you could run your own gigs, choose your routes. We could pay off the lease with the extra jobs you take. He set his sandwich down, wiping his hands on his jeans, his brain ticking over. Could work. I'm sick of hauling for pennies for the other guy. Running my own show could mean real money. So, we did it. We found a decent truck, not the newest model, but reliable enough to handle the long hauls Tom was planning. The day we went to look at it, Tom was like a kid in a candy store, checking every part, talking shop with the dealer, so I barely kept up. Erica, she's solid, good mileage, engine's in top shape. We take care of her, she'll take care of us, he said, his eyes not leaving the truck. I nodded, trusting his judgment. Let's do it then. Let's buy our future. And we did. Papers signed, handshakes exchanged, and the keys were in his hand. Tom got his license sorted out for the new routes we'd scoped out, and soon he was taking orders for intercity trips. Money was tight at first, every cent counted even more than before. But Tom was pulling in enough jobs to keep us on track with the lease payments. Meanwhile, I didn't sit idle. My sewing had turned from a side hustle into a serious business. Enough so, that 3 years down the line, I opened my own small studio. It wasn't much, just a little space I rented out on the main street. The start was rocky, clients trickling in slow. But I kept at it, word of mouth started doing its thing, and my little studio began to see regulars. It was another 2 years of hustle, but finally, things smoothed out. The studio was bringing in a stable income, and we made the last payment on the truck. All that money we used to pour into the lease? Now it was ours to keep. One night, over a quiet dinner, Tom and I decided it was time for the next big step. We've been doing good, Tom. Really good. Maybe it's time we thought about getting a place of our own. A real house, not this cramped apartment. Tom, who'd been quietly listening, nodded. I've been thinking the same. We've worked hard, Erica. We deserve it. So, we started house hunting, and before long, we found a small townhouse. It was perfect for us, just enough space, a little yard, and a room that I could turn into a proper studio. We moved in, and it felt like a fresh start. Everything we'd worked for was finally coming together. After we settled into our new townhouse, Tom and I decided it was high time we took a break. We packed up and headed out to visit his mom, who lived a few cities over. Since Tom's dad passed, his mom had been living with his sister, Linda, and her 2 kids. Tom's mom was a sweet lady, always had been good to me. But Linda, well, that's another story. She and I never really saw eye to eye. Something about the way I came up, made my own way, she didn't like it, always hinting that I was just lucky. We pulled up to their house, a cozy little place with toys scattered across the front yard. Tom's mom greeted us with hugs and homemade cookies, her warmth a comforting blanket. But Linda, she just nodded, her smile tight, eyes scanning us like we were pages in a book she didn't want to read. Dinner was tense from the get-go. Linda cooked, which I made sure to compliment, but you could cut the tension with a knife. As we sat down, the small talk fluttered around, never landing anywhere substantial until Linda, stirring her drink, turned to me. "So, Erica, how's that little sewing business of yours? Making good money?" Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp, prodding. I paused, fork in midair. "It's a studio, Linda, and it's doing well, thanks." "And Tom's trucking? I bet that's bringing in plenty, huh?" She was leaning in now, her voice a mix of curiosity and something darker. I set my fork down, my appetite waning. "Linda, I don't think it's very polite to dig into people's finances at the dinner table." I tried to change the subject, asked about her kids, her life. But Linda was like a dog with a bone, wouldn't let it go. The evening spiraled from there, her questions peppering the air until I couldn't take another bite. "I think I'm full," I said abruptly, pushing my chair back. "Thanks for dinner." I could feel Tom's eyes on me, the weight of an apology in his gaze. I headed to the living room, the echo of their whispers trailing me. Later, when Tom found me looking out the window, the room was dark, save for the streetlights casting shadows. He came up behind me, his voice low. "Sorry about Linda. She's always been a bit much." I turned to face him, his features drawn in the dim light. "Why do you let her talk to you, or to us, like that?" He shrugged, a helpless gesture that didn't sit right with me. "I guess I'm used to giving in to her. Keeps the peace, you know?" "But at what cost?" I pressed, my voice firm. "She walks all over you because she knows she can. And now me?" Tom ran a hand through his hair, the lines of his face deepening. I know. It's just complicated. She's been having a hard time since Dad passed, and Mom relies on me to not stir things up." I sighed, stepping closer. "I get it, Tom, but it's not right. You can't let her push us around, make us uncomfortable in our own family." "Where does it end?" The next dinner was just as stressful. I tried to make conversation about benign things, hoping to keep the evening light, but Linda had other plans. She wasted no time, diving straight into dangerous waters. "You know, since you two have done so well for yourselves," she started, her voice dripping with a mix of envy and accusation, "I think it's only fair that you think about the rest of us who haven't been so lucky." Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat, looking anywhere but at his sister. I clenched my fork a little tighter, feeling the calm before the storm. Linda continued, undeterred by our silence. "In fact, I think it's only right if you two give up your claim on Mom's property. After all, you don't need it." "I do." I was stunned. Discussing inheritance in front of Tom's mother, who was very much alive and sitting right there, was beyond inappropriate, it was disrespectful. "Linda, I can't believe you're bringing this up now," I said, my voice low and steady. "It's Mom's decision, not ours or yours." But Linda plowed ahead, her voice rising. "Oh, come on, Erica. You don't need the money. You don't need the house. I'm here with 2 kids, trying to make ends meet. It should be mine. I need it more than you do." Tom looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. He hated confrontation, especially with his sister, but even he looked like he might speak up this time. Before he could, however, his mom intervened. "That's enough, Linda," she said, her voice firm, leaving no room for argument. "I've already discussed this with my lawyer. The house will go to you and the children, and the money I've saved will go to Tom. That's final." Linda's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. "But the house is old. And Erica doesn't need the money, they make plenty." Tom's mom fixed a stern gaze on her daughter. "The house being old doesn't change my decision, and it's not your place to comment on Erica's finances. What you need to do is stop counting on others, and maybe get a job to support your children." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Linda, mouth snapped shut and cheeks burning, didn't utter another word. Dinner ended quietly, and the rest of the evening passed with minimal interaction. The remainder of the week, I spent a lot of time with Tom's mom. The day we were leaving, she pulled me aside, handing me a small, ornate box. This has been in the family for years, she said, her eyes locking onto mine. It's filled with coins from different countries. I've added to it over the years. I want you to have it, to remember me by. I was touched, unsure what to say. Thank you, I will cherish it. Study them when I'm gone, she added, a hint of mystery in her tone. There's more to them than meets the eye. We hugged, a long, tight embrace that said everything words couldn't. It had been a month since our last, somewhat strained, visit to see Tom's mom. Life had slipped back into its normal rhythm, Tom returning from a long haul on the road and me buried in fabric and threads at my studio, rushing to meet an urgent order. That ordinary afternoon shattered with a single phone call. Tom answered his phone, his face draining of color as he listened. Linda? His voice was tight, worried. After a pause, his shoulders slumped. Oh, no. Okay, I'll be there. He hung up, looking lost. What happened? I asked, my heart sinking at his expression. It's Mom. She passed away, Tom managed, his voice barely a whisper. I felt a chill run down my spine. I'm so sorry, Tom. When's the funeral? Tomorrow, he replied, the word heavy between us. Tomorrow? That's so soon. Why didn't Linda tell us sooner? I frowned, concern lacing my tone. Tom shook his head, just as confused and frustrated. Before he could respond, I snatched the phone from the table and dialed Linda back, my pulse racing with a mix of anger and dread. Linda, why are we only hearing about this now? And why so rushed? I demanded as soon as she picked up. Erica, this really isn't your concern. I've been too upset, and we're trying to respect Mom's wishes. Linda snapped, her voice cold. And what wishes are those? I pushed, needing to understand her hurried decisions. Mom said only blood relatives should attend the funeral. That's why we're keeping it small. Just family, not you. Linda explained, a bit too quickly. Tom, overhearing the conversation, gently interjected. If that's what Mom wanted, then we should respect her wishes. I'll go alone. Linda's response was almost too quick. Yes, that's best. I'll see you soon, Tom. After hanging up, the silence in our home was stifling. I helped Tom pack, folding his clothes quietly, my mind racing with doubts about Linda's intentions. Despite my misgivings, I booked Tom's train ticket online, each click a reminder of the distance this situation was putting between us. He hugged me, tight and long, then stepped out into the fading light of day. I watched as he drove off, feeling a mix of sorrow for his loss and irritation at Linda's vague explanations and hurried arrangements. The quiet in the house was heavy, the kind that weighs on you, makes every little noise seem louder. I couldn't shake the sinking feeling in my gut. Why hadn't his mom wanted me at the funeral? We had a good thing, a genuine respect for each other. It didn't add up. Dragging my feet back inside, I noticed the small, ornate box on the mantel, one that Tom's mom had entrusted to me during our last, happier visit. I sat down, the box in my lap, my fingers tracing the intricate patterns carved into the wood before I finally opened it. Inside, nestled among various old coins from around the world, was a folded piece of paper, clearly her handwriting visible even before I pulled it out. Unfolding the note, I read her words, each one a mix of warmth and warning. My dear Erica. Thank you for the laughter and strength you've brought into our family. Please, make sure you are with Tom at my funeral. I know Linda well, she will try to sway him to give up his rightful share, playing on his kind nature. I trust you to stand by him, as he may not have the heart to stand up to her alone. I read it twice, then a third time, each word sinking in deeper. Linda had lied. She'd played us all, hoping to manipulate Tom in my absence. Rage bubbled up inside me, not just for the deception, but for the sheer audacity of her plan. I grabbed my phone and dialed Tom's number, pacing the room as it rang. Erica? What's up? I'm still at the station, Tom answered, his voice tired. You need to wait for me, please. Don't get on that train. I'm on my way. I didn't wait for his response. I ended the call, grabbed my bag, and headed out the door. My mind was racing as I hailed a taxi to the station. Traffic seemed to conspire against me, every red light a barrier to my urgency, but I made it just in time. Walking into Tom's late mother's house felt like stepping onto a stage where a drama was already in progress. The moment Linda saw both of us, her face twisted in a mix of surprise and anger. She almost sputtered. "What are you doing here, Erica? Nobody called you." I met her glare steadily. "I came to say goodbye to your mother," I said simply. Linda huffed, turning away to hide the fury in her eyes. The funeral was a modest affair. I stayed at the back during the ceremony, saying my silent goodbyes to a woman who had shown me nothing but kindness. Afterward, everyone returned to the house. The mood was somber as we gathered in the living room, waiting for the notary to arrive and read the will. Linda paced nervously, casting glances at me that could freeze boiling water. When the notary finally cleared his throat and opened his briefcase, everyone settled down. "As per the last will and testament of Marjorie Ellen Davis," he began, his voice formal and echoing slightly in the hushed room. Linda's eyes were locked on the papers as the notary read through the legal jargon to the heart of the matter. "To Linda, I bequeath the family home and all contained within. To Thomas, I bequeath the sum of $400,000. The reaction was immediate. Linda's face crumpled into tears, her sobs theatrically loud. "But how can I live in that house? It's falling apart. I have no job, how will I provide for my children?" Tom, ever the soft heart, looked at his sister with something akin to guilt. His eyes met mine, filled with a turmoil that said he was torn by his sister's pleas. The notary, unfazed by the display, asked if there were any questions. Linda, through her tears, begged Tom directly. "Please, Tom, think of my kids. They're your nieces. We need that money more than you." Tom opened his mouth, likely to offer some kind of compromise, that was his nature. But I couldn't stand it anymore. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. Linda's sobs hiccuped into a shocked silence. "Enough, Linda," I said, my voice steady and clear. Everyone in the room turned to look at me, surprised by the force in my voice. "I know what you've been trying to do, and it's going to stop, right now." I pulled out the note, unfolding it with shaking hands, but a firm resolve. I read it aloud for everyone, my voice echoing in the suddenly quiet room. "Please make sure you are with Tom at my funeral. I know Linda well, she will try to sway him to give up his rightful share, playing on his kind nature." Linda's face went from sad to furious in a heartbeat. When I finished, she looked around, seemingly gauging if anyone would come to her defense. When no one did, she finally spoke, her voice venomous. "I deserve that money more than he does," she spat, standing up to face us all. "I have kids to care for, a house that's falling apart. Why shouldn't I have it?" It was Tom's turn to stand. "Because it's not what Mom wanted, Linda," he shouted, louder than I'd ever heard him before. "You've always used me, always expected me to just roll over and do what you say, because you're my sister. Well, not anymore." Linda recoiled as if he'd struck her, her face a mask of disbelief. She stared at him, her mouth open, tears stopping as if cut off by a switch. "I'm taking the inheritance Mom left me, and I'm putting it where it can do some good," Tom continued, his voice firm and resolute. The shock on Linda's face gave way to real tears, tears of defeat, not manipulation. She sobbed, covering her face with her hands, her act finally crumbling under the weight of Tom's declaration. We didn't stay much longer after that. Tom took my hand, and we walked out together, leaving Linda to her reality. As we drove home, the car was filled with a tense silence. Finally, Tom spoke, his voice quiet but strong. "I'm sorry for all this, Erica. For letting it go on this long. After securing the inheritance, we made some big moves. We split the $400,000, investing it smartly into both our futures. It felt good, right, even, to put that money to use in ways that would honor the memory of Tom's mom. First off, we bolstered the atelier. I hired a couple of skilled assistants and expanded our workspace. It was amazing to see my dream of a bustling studio come to life, filled with creativity and the steady hum of sewing machines. "Looks like you're building an empire here," Tom joked one afternoon as he watched us lay out fabric for a big order. Tom, on his side, didn't waste any time either. He used his share to buy 2 more trucks, expanding his fleet. "Gotta keep up with you, Erica. Can't have you outdoing me in ambition," he'd said with a wink. Hiring drivers came next, and soon, he had his own small but thriving transport company. It was a proud moment for us both, signing off on those trucks, knowing they were entirely ours, no loans, no debts hanging over us. Speaking of debts, we finally paid off the mortgage on our townhouse. Passing that last check across the bank manager's desk felt like lifting a weight off our shoulders. "All ours now," Tom had murmured as we walked back to the car, his arm snug around my shoulders. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm after that. Our businesses were doing well, which meant we could take a bit more time to enjoy the little things. Long walks in the evening, weekend getaways when we could squeeze them in, and plenty of quiet nights at home, just enjoying each other's company. But it wasn't just business thriving in our lives. Recently, we got some news that added a whole new layer of excitement. Turns out, I'm pregnant. The day I found out, I couldn't wait for Tom to get home. I paced around the kitchen, the positive test clutched in my hand, waiting to drop the bombshell. When he finally walked in, I blurted it out before he could even take his coat off. "Tom, we're going to have a baby." He froze, then broke into the biggest grin I've ever seen. "Really? We're going to be parents?" His voice was a mix of disbelief and joy. "Yeah, we are," I said, laughing as he swept me up into his arms, spinning me around in pure happiness. As for Linda, well, we haven't had much contact with her. Last we heard, she'd had to find a job to support herself and the kids. It's tough, but maybe it's for the best. Learning to stand on her own might do her some good, I figure. It's funny how life works out. There were times when I thought we'd never see the end of the turmoil. Now, here we are, our lives full and expanding like my belly, new beginnings that feel just right. We've got plans, big ones, for our family and our businesses. And whatever comes, I know we'll handle it, together. Because that's what we do best. Growing up, our house was like a fortress of strict rules and sharp expectations. I'm Emily, by the way. My dad, Richard, co-owned a big tech company and believed in running our family like a corporate boardroom. My mom, Helen, stayed at home, her life revolving around maintaining the perfect household and making sure me and my sister, Anna, stayed on track, her version of track. Anna, 3 years my senior, was the star child. She aced everything without even trying. Or so it seemed to me, always stumbling in her shadow. Our parents, especially Dad, made it clear they had high hopes for us. Hopes that pretty much mapped out our entire lives, top grades, elite college, prestigious careers. This particular evening was like any replay of a tired old sitcom. Dinner was tense. The clinking of cutlery on fine china always seemed louder when the air was thick with expectation. Dad's eyes darted from Anna to me, like he was mentally tallying points on some parental scoreboard. "So, Anna, your economics teacher called today. She's impressed with your latest project. Said it was college-level work," Dad announced, his voice tinged with pride. Anna smiled, the perfect daughter glow up on full display. "Thanks, Dad. I really pushed myself with this one." His gaze swung to me. "And Emily, how are your grades?" "Still struggling with calculus, I hear." The food in my mouth turned to sawdust. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Anna's eyes flickered my way, a glimmer of sympathy before she quickly masked it. "Math isn't my thing, Dad. You know I'm more into." "Math is everyone's thing if they put in the effort," he cut me off. His tone wasn't mean, just matter of fact, as if he was discussing the weather or a stock market trend. Mom chimed in, her voice softer but no less insistent. Your father's right, Emily. You can't just give up because something doesn't come easily. Look at Anna. She works hard. Why can't you be more like her? I bristled. I do work hard. Just not at things that matter to you. Dad's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means I have other interests. Like art. He scoffed, shaking his head. Art is a hobby, Emily. It won't pay your bills or build a future. You need to be realistic. I pushed my chair back, the legs screeching against the tile floor. Excuse me, I need some air. As I left, Dad's voice followed me. We're only saying this for your own good, Emily. Outside, the cool evening breeze was a small relief from the stifling dining room. Their expectations were like chains, heavy and cold, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't seem to break free. Not like Anna, who wore those expectations like a crown, always poised, always perfect. But that night, under the starry sky, I made a silent vow. One day, I'd find a place where I wasn't just Anna's lesser shadow. A place where I could be me, whatever that meant, without apology or comparison. In our house, everything was a competition, especially for my sister Anna and me. My dad had this belief that pitting us against each other was the way to breed success. He'd say stuff like, competition sharpens the mind. But all it did for me was grind my confidence into dust. I mean, imagine screwing up a math problem and then going to school with a rumbling stomach the next day, because of it. That was my reality. Anna always came out on top. Whether it was math, science, or any school subject, she nailed it. Because of that, she was the golden child, the one who wore new clothes and had lunch packed with more than just leftovers. On the other hand, I was the one in faded jeans, trying to get by on scraps. Dad made sure of it. You need to push harder, Emily, he'd say at the dinner table, barely looking up from his plate as he compared our report cards. Look at your sister. She's setting the bar. Meet it or go hungry. The unfairness of it all could choke you. My mom, Helen, always backed him up too. Your father's right, she'd add, in that quiet voice of hers that somehow sliced deeper than any shout. We only want what's best for you. But I had a different idea of what was best for me. My room was my refuge, a small space crammed with paints, brushes, and canvases. I wasn't any good with numbers or business strategies, but give me a brush, and I could make magic. One late afternoon, after another crushing round of comparisons where I came up lacking, I escaped to my room, slamming the door behind me. I needed to drown everything out, the disappointment in Dad's eyes, Mom's sighs, Anna's awkward attempts to make me feel better. Painting was my escape, my secret world. I was mixing some blues and greens, trying to capture the storm inside me on the canvas, when Anna knocked softly. Emily, can I come in? I didn't have it in me to send her away, so I just grunted. Yeah, whatever. She stepped in, hovering by the door. Her eyes roamed over my makeshift studio, lingering on the unfinished canvas. That looks amazing, Em. It's just a storm, I muttered, focusing on blending the colors, letting the brush strokes express my frustration. No, I mean it. You really have something here. Why don't you show them? I scoffed, a harsh laugh escaping me. Yeah, right. Look, Dad, forget about my crappy grades and check out this painting I made. That'll really impress him. Anna bit her lip, looking like she wanted to argue, but instead, she shifted the topic. Just, don't let him stop you, okay? You're good. Really good. The last year of school crushed me under its weight. Anna had sailed into the Faculty of Management at the prestigious university everyone expected us both to attend. Me? I was barely scraping by, my heart not in the endless formulas and business strategies that piled up on my desk. The day the college acceptance letters were due, the atmosphere at home was electric with tension. I already knew what the letter would say, or rather, what it wouldn't. Dragging myself downstairs, I found both my parents in the living room, the dreaded letter lying like a verdict on the coffee table. Mom's face was stormy as she waved the letter at me. Care to explain this? I took a deep breath, bracing for the explosion. I didn't get in. And you're not even upset? Mom accused. Her voice was sharp, like she could cut me open and find the answers she wanted. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Your sister got in with flying colors, and here you are, failing. I'm not Anna. I shot back, my patience fraying. That's the problem. You never try hard enough. You're going to end up a stupid beggar. Her words stung, but not as much as they used to. I was too tired, too worn down from fighting a battle I never chose. I don't want to be a businesswoman, I said quietly, the truth finally spilling out. I want to be an artist. The room went deadly quiet. Dad, who had been silently brooding by the window, turned sharply. His voice was cold and furious. You want to what? Throw your life away? It's my life, I retorted, feeling a spark of defiance. Not yours. I've never wanted this. I've never wanted any of this. You ungrateful child, Dad hissed, his face red with anger. If you think you can choose such a worthless path, you can get out. Get out and don't come back. His words hung heavy in the air. I looked from him to Mom, who was shaking her head, tears of frustration, or was it disappointment, in her eyes. Fine, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'll leave. I don't need this. I don't need any of you. As I stormed upstairs, my heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear my parents arguing in the background. I shoved my clothes, my sketchbooks, a few cherished art supplies into a bag. With each item, I felt a chain breaking, a piece of the old, suffocating life falling away. When I walked out the door, suitcase in hand, Dad's final words were a cold goodbye. You're no daughter of mine anymore. I stepped out into the unknown, the evening air cool and slightly biting against my face. It was scary, and for a moment, I didn't know what to do or where to go. But as I walked down the street, the weight of years of expectations lifted off my shoulders, and I realized I was free. The only place I thought of going was Grandma's. She had always been the soft counter to Dad's strict rules, a quiet rebel who nurtured my love for painting, despite his disapproval. So, with my world turned upside down, I found myself dragging my suitcase up her garden path, the familiar scent of her rose bushes somehow reassuring. Knocking on her door, my heart was thumping wildly, half out of fear, half out of relief. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, her expression shifted from surprise to concern in a heartbeat. Emily, what in the world? She didn't finish her sentence, just pulled me into a warm hug that smelled like vanilla and fabric softener. I left home, Grandma, I managed to say, my voice muffled against her shoulder. Come in, she ushered, leading me into the cozy kitchen where a kettle was already whistling on the stove. Once we were seated at her table, a cup of tea in front of each of us, I told her everything. How Dad had disowned me, how Mom just stood there, how I couldn't bear to live under their roof a moment longer. Grandma listened, her eyes softening with each word I spoke. You did what you had to do, dear, she said once I'd finished. And you'll always have a home here with me. Relief washed over me, the tension I'd been carrying dissipating slightly. Thank you, Grandma. I don't know what I would do without you. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Now, tell me about your plans. I know you, Emily. You must have a plan. Taking a deep breath, I shared my secret hope with her. I applied to the Institute of Arts. On the internet, quietly. I didn't tell Mom and Dad. Grandma's face broke into a wide smile. That's wonderful. Following your heart, that's my girl. The conversation shifted to lighter topics for a while, allowing me to breathe easier and feel momentarily carefree. But later that evening, as we were cleaning up after a dinner of her homemade lasagna, my phone buzzed with an email notification. I checked it, not expecting much. It's from the Institute of Arts, I said, a knot forming in my stomach. Grandma dried her hands quickly and came over to stand beside me. Well, open it, dear, she urged, her voice tinged with excitement. With a shaky hand, I tapped on the screen and read the contents of the email, my eyes widening with each word. I got in, Grandma. I got in, and they're offering me a scholarship. Full tuition covered. Oh, Emily! Grandma exclaimed, her eyes brimming with tears as she pulled me into another hug. I knew it. I always knew you had something special. This is just the beginning for you. We spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, about art and dreams, and making a new life. It felt like for the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Grandma's faith in me bolstered my own, and I felt ready to take on this new challenge. A few days later, Grandma accompanied me to the institute to finalize my registration. Walking through the halls filled with vibrant art and buzzing with creative energy, I felt a sense of belonging that had eluded me for years. You're going to do great things, my dear, Grandma whispered as we left the administration office, my enrollment confirmed. Living on campus was a world away from everything I'd known. For the first time, I was not just studying what I loved, I was immersed in it. The transition wasn't easy, though. Drawing had been something I sneaked around doing back home because my parents had made it clear they didn't see a future in it for me. But here, at the Institute of Arts, it was my life. My first year was tough. The freedom to create was exhilarating, but also daunting. I struggled initially, battling the ingrained fear of my parents' disapproval and the pressure to prove I could make it on my own. Yet, with every sketch and painting, I grew more confident. By the end of the year, not only had I found my footing, but I had also emerged as one of the top students in my class. Professors praised my unique style, and I started to believe maybe I did have something special. As my skills developed, so did recognition. The school offered a few of us, the so-called emerging talents, a chance to showcase our work at a personal exhibition. I jumped at the opportunity. Preparing for the exhibition was intense. Every piece had to say something, to stand out. I poured my heart into each painting, hoping they were good enough to be noticed. The night of the exhibition was surreal. The gallery was buzzing with people, music softly playing in the background, lights casting a perfect glow on the paintings. I stood nervously by my work, watching as people walked by, stopping to look, to discuss. My grandmother, who had come to see the exhibition, stood beside me, her eyes wet with pride. "You've done well, Emily," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "I'm so proud of you." That night, something incredible happened. A local TV crew, who had come to cover the exhibition, featured my work. Suddenly, I wasn't just a student, I was an artist being talked about. The segment aired, and the next thing I knew, I was being invited to talk about my art on various shows. My paintings started circulating on the internet, gaining popularity. It was all so fast, so big. I felt like I was dreaming. The real pinch-me moment came when an animation studio contacted me. They wanted to use my designs for a series. Next thing, those sketches and characters I created in the solitude of my studio were moving, living on screens. They even started a comic book series based on them. And yeah, they paid me, which felt weird but incredible. I remember sitting in my dorm, watching the first episode of the animated series, thinking about how far I'd come. From hiding my sketches from my parents, to seeing my creations come to life on TV, it was mind-blowing. I was in my studio on campus, streaks of paint on my hands, and a blank canvas waiting, when my phone rang. It was Anna. I hesitated for a moment, not sure what to expect. We hadn't talked much since I left home. "Emily? It's Anna," she said, her voice uncertain. "I saw you on TV last night. You were amazing." "Thanks," I replied, taken aback by her call and her compliment. "I appreciate it, Anna. How's school going for you?" "It's fine," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Actually, that's partly why I called. I've been thinking a lot about what I'm doing. I'm not sure I'm as cut out for the business world as Dad thinks. Watching you follow your passion made me wonder if I'm just going along with what's expected of me, not what I want." This was new. Anna, the perfect student, doubting her path? It's never too late to change your course, you know. If you're not happy, maybe it's time to think about what you really want, I said, more as a friend than as her estranged sister. Yeah, right, she laughed softly. Maybe I need a bit of your courage. We can share some of mine. I've got plenty to go around now, I joked, easing the tension. A few weeks later, Anna came to visit me. She toured my studio and my latest works, her interest genuine. It was strange but comforting to have her in my space, seeing the part of my life that had caused so much distance between us. You really are talented, Emily, Anna said as she looked around at the paintings, the sketches, and the splashes of color everywhere. It's my world, I told her, feeling a surge of pride. Wanna try? She hesitated, then smiled. Why not? Handing her a brush felt symbolic, like I was welcoming her into my life in a way we hadn't shared since we were kids. As Anna and I laughed over her crooked paint strokes, I realized that this recognition was all I had really wanted from the start. As our laughter died down, Anna's expression turned serious. You know, when Mom and Dad found out about your TV spot and the shows, they were furious. Dad said you're defaming the family name with your doodles. They really don't get it, Em. The words stung, but I wasn't surprised. Let them think what they want, I said, shrugging. I'm not living for them anymore, Anna. I'm living for me. And for the art. Yeah. Anna nodded, looking around at all the colors and shapes that filled my world now. You've built something beautiful here, Em. Don't ever let them tell you otherwise. Hearing that from Anna, knowing that she saw the value in what I was doing despite our parents' disapproval, meant everything. It solidified my resolve to keep going, no matter what they said or did. I was an artist, and that was something no one could take away from me. It had been 6 months of peace and creativity when it all came crashing down during one of my exhibitions. I was showcasing some of my latest work, which had drawn a decent crowd, buzzing with chatter and admiration. That's when my parents stormed in, their faces thunderous. My father, his face red with anger, scanned the room until his eyes landed on me. Without hesitation, he marched over, my mother trailing behind him, her eyes darting nervously around the room. The moment he reached me, he erupted. This is what you left your family for? These ridiculous paintings? He gestured wildly at my art hanging on the walls. You're shaming us, Emily. You think this is a real job? Artists are just drug addicts pretending to be profound. I was stunned, words failing me as his voice echoed off the gallery walls. Before I could gather my thoughts, he lunged at one of my paintings, his hands clawing at the canvas. I gasped, stepping forward, but the gallery organizer was quicker. He called security immediately. Sir, you need to leave. Now. The organizer demanded, as 2 guards quickly intervened, pulling my father away from the damaged artwork. The aftermath was a blur of apologies from me to the guests and the gallery owner, assurances that this was an isolated incident. But the damage was done. The evening was ruined, and so was my mood. Over the next few days, my phone was bombarded with texts from both of my parents. Each message was a dagger, full of accusations and predictions of doom. You'll come crawling back once you realize the real world isn't kind to dreamers, one read. You think you're successful? This is just a phase, said another. I tried to ignore them, but each beep of my phone brought a fresh wave of anxiety. It wasn't until I received an email notification about the animated series based on my artwork that I found a sliver of vindication. The series had just crossed another 1 million views, and the comments were overwhelmingly positive, praising the creativity and unique style. Fueled by a mix of anger and pride, I copied the link to the YouTube page and sent it to my parents with a simple message. See for yourself. After that, the messages stopped. Their silence was louder than all their criticisms combined. Maybe, just maybe, they had watched the videos and read the comments. Perhaps they finally understood that my art was something real and valued by others, even if they couldn't see it themselves. 2 years had flown by when my sister Anna called me with news that shook our family to its core. Dad had lost his business due to a betrayal by a foreign partner, and they were financially ruined. They had to sell the house and move into a small apartment. What's more, Anna decided to leave the prestigious university she never truly loved and was planning to transfer to another college to study landscape design, something she was genuinely passionate about. During the holiday season, I visited Grandma's house, where Anna was now staying. She was beaming with genuine happiness, a stark contrast to the stressed sister I remembered. "I've got a scholarship, Emily," she told me as soon as I walked in. "I'm finally studying what I want, and I'll be living here with Grandma." "That's amazing, Anna. I'm so proud of you," I replied, embracing her tightly. Grandma joined in, hugging us both. "You girls are so talented," she said, her eyes twinkling with pride and love. Over the next 3 years, my career as an artist flourished. My paintings were featured in top galleries across the country, and I managed to carve out a name for myself in the competitive art world. My work sold for substantial amounts, allowing me to live comfortably and continue pursuing my passion. However, the past has a way of catching up. One day, as I was setting up a new series of paintings in my studio, my parents walked in. The sight of them was startling. Dad looked frail and worn, a shadow of his former self, and Mom was dressed far more modestly than I had ever seen. "Emily, we need to talk," Dad began, his voice weak but urgent. I nodded, leading them to a small sitting area in the corner of my studio. "What's going on?" I asked, although the tight knot in my stomach already had an inkling. "We're in a bad place, Emily," Mom started, her voice trembling. "We've lost everything, and we need your help." Dad coughed slightly before adding, "You've done well for yourself, which we knew you would, despite what we said. We were hoping you could lend us some money. Help us get back on our feet." The request hung heavily in the air, thick with irony and desperation. I took a deep breath, the memories of their dismissal and harsh words echoing in my mind. "You both disowned me when I chose this path. You said I would fail and wished me nothing but the worst," I reminded them softly, yet firmly. "Yes, but we're still your family," Dad insisted, looking at me with eyes that were pleading yet prideful. "I built this life on my own, without any help from you after you turned your backs on me. You made it clear then that you didn't want anything to do with me or my career," I continued, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Mom looked down, tears starting to form in her eyes, while Dad simply stared, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry, but I won't be giving you any money," I concluded, the finality in my voice mirroring the closure I felt in my heart. They stood, the air thick with tension and unspoken words. "We hope you reconsider, Emily," Mom said softly as they turned to leave. Watching them walk away, I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. It was a difficult decision, but necessary to protect the life and boundaries I had fought so hard to establish.